Hello, Anu. Welcome to Friends from Work.
Hi, Robbie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, how's it going today?
Good, good. It's kind of crazy. Like I've been working on, I worked on this so long ago, and you're like, finally, it's coming out. And you're finally,
Right,
oh my God, I don't have to worry about spoilers. I still do, but
right, right. I'm sure in a few weeks there will be a lot of relief on that front.
yes, yes.
Um,
You get a chance.
First off, I don't normally attend these interviews in a suit, so I apologize for that. I am actually a lawyer in real life and just came from a hearing that ran later than I thought it would. So it's a little merging of worlds, which is appropriate for this particular show.
Coming from a hearing right now.
I am, yes.
That's so apropos. Did it go well?
It did go well, actually. Yeah. So feeling good. It was taken under advisement, but in a way that was encouraging. So
That is so wild. So, like, wow, you're actually a lawyer. We could have used your help on the show. Are you like, how do you feel about the legal part of our show?
well, that's one of the things I was gonna say. I feel like on this episode in particular, y'all really nailed a lot. The whole summary judgment conversation, but also did I hear a Law 360 reference in there?
Maybe Law 360. I don't know. I don't. It's funny that you say that because we had so many legal advisors on the show, and you're sort of trying to make, Jessica's talked about this, so I feel like I can share it, but it's like,
Hmm.
you want these cases to be interesting, but you are a lawyer. You understand that sometimes it's just not all of
Right.
it interesting. Or it's
Right.
not filmic. And so I don't know. I'm curious what reference you're talking about because I'm not a lawyer and I don't know.
Sure. I thought I heard whenever Jen's listening to a podcast or a radio show in the car, a little reference there. But there have been a couple things throughout the series, but especially in this episode that I was like, they made a point to try to get these things as
I bet you
correct as they could.
because the what she's listening to has changed. Like it was different than in cut
Oh,
done. So I wonder if they did to make it more. That's interesting.
oh, interesting. Well, that's one of the questions that we got. We let some of our listeners know that we get to speak with you today, and they put in some questions for us to ask, if you don't mind. And one that popped up a couple different ways was about the collaboration that you've had with the other creators in general, but also with Kat, just given that it's really just you two directing. What does that look like in terms of deciding who would direct which episodes and in terms of kind of figuring out the pacing and themes across the series as a whole?
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely came in as a guest director and sort of my job and the job is you come in and it's like Kat and Jessica have done so and the actors have done so much groundwork of laying like the tone of the
Mm-hmm.
whole and then you get your episodes and you're like, oh, these are kind of different and like we can play around with this or I want to take this in a little different direction here and you try to do that still keeping in mind you want it to feel like it's one cohesive show. So there's
Right.
conversations around that. But it's sort of like, the specific episodes I directed, there's like room to play because there's like a lot of like fun kind of different things that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, like I'm not deciding which episodes I got. It was like these are the episodes.
Okay.
And I was like, great.
Right.
Episodes, yeah.
That's okay. That makes sense. Well, and that was a thank you, Jordan, for that question. If you're listening, another that we got that I'm always wondering, the MCU is such its own thing, and it's such its own community. Prior to working on She-Hulk, how familiar were you with the MCU as a whole? And are there kind of any particular projects that you like that maybe drew you to this or made you excited to work on She-Hulk?
I mean, I was definitely like a fan. Like,
Uh-huh.
I was a fan. I watched not all of the movies, but a lot of them. And I was watching the TV series and I was like definitely like a I was a fan. I grew up reading the Incredible Hulk comics, but I
Oh,
wasn't
no way.
yeah, that was like the one I read. My brother and I were obsessed with it. But that was
Wow.
it was like that and Batman were like the two things that we read.
Nice.
So I know it's DC, but it's all good. It's good.
Hey, there's enough room.
But then, and it's funny because as a fan, you also you want to do service to the fans, but you also want to create something new and not come from a place of fear, just come a place of like
Right.
story in the most truthful, funny way. I feel like I was really, the comedic tone, balancing that and emotions and like the emotional crux of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Jessica and Kat laid such a groundwork that I really just built off of that. But I know personally, I was like looking, I think everybody feels this way. I was like looking to like what Taika Waititi did with Thor.
Yeah.
Like he balanced that so well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was like maybe out of the Marvel films, that was like the most forefront of my mind, just in terms of
Yeah.
like, how can we lay in even the technical thing of like improvising with a CGI character,
Yeah.
that type of stuff. And so I was personally, that movie was on my mind a lot, but I can't say that I created the tone or anything, so I didn't, but it was like you're sort of building off.
Right. You mentioned about the improvisation with a CGI character. I know there have been some interviews where creators have talked about scenes that were She-Hulk and then had to be Jen, and then sort of kind of balancing out the amount of CGI versus just straight Jen character scenes that you would get. Can you talk about how, I mean, in this episode that's so heavily focused on the different sides of her and whether she can embrace She-Hulk, was that a concern here?
Wasn't so much when I was filming. I think in post, then you're like, oh, this is expensive.
Right.
Reduce some of this. But when we were filming, it was sort of like, oh, I'm mostly just thinking about what makes the scene, what do we need in the scene, how much fun can we have?
Right.
Also just kind of filming, being like, I want as much as I can get in the edit because you're going to play around so much. So the actors are so good, the scripts are so strong.
Yeah.
You make sure you get it as scripted, and then the actors understand the scenes so well that a lot of improv has made it into the final cuts.
Okay, nice. Well, I know we're almost out of time here, but I had to ask, coming in and working on a character like She-Hulk, and we've loved this show so much. We have a grading system on our podcast, and I've been getting She-Hulk like A+ every week, and this episode today is no exception. But I know that our listeners and I would love to hear, what is it that you think makes She-Hulk stand out so much kind of among the pantheon of MCU characters? And what do you think, there's something about it that hits different and that's so fun and so compelling, but also like compelling on an emotional level. And I would love to hear sort of your own thoughts on what drew you to that character, and sort of what that experience has been like working with her.
So glad to hear you say that, because you don't know if something's going to work, because it is different. Like the show is very self-aware and like self-referential, and includes, I mean, the breaking of the fourth wall is like fully just includes the audience and includes kind of what
Right.
you see. Do you know what I mean? It's so,
Yeah.
it also allows you to get to know her a little bit more. Like I feel like you can, because she's talking to you, so you
Yeah.
understand her. She's like a buddy. And I was so drawn to Jennifer because I felt like, oh, our lives are very parallel. Like I felt so much connection to her. It's like a 30-something woman who's like not always balancing her work life with her,
Right.
And then also but then the show is really interested in the deep, quite complex ideas of identity and questioning your identity. So people put on what your identity is. Like she was Jennifer for 30-something years, and then all of a sudden she's She-Hulk, and she didn't even come up with the name.
Right.
But she is. So now she's got to learn to embrace that and love herself. Those are really complex ideas, and I think you can talk about that in theory, but I really looks at that in a really real way. And so I think it's really exciting, because I wasn't sure if people would feel close to her, because I was like, I feel this. I hope other people do. So it's nice to know. And that speaks to the writing and the acting in Tatiana and how good she is. It's hard not to watch her and be like,
Oh man, seriously. Well, this episode did all that especially masterfully. And then we're so excited to see what the next two will be, especially with that little teaser at the very end. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. And as always, you have a standing invitation to join Friends from Work anytime. Maybe once it's all wrapped up and you can talk about all the spoilers, we can have you back on.
Thank you, Robbie, so much.
Thank you, Anu. Have a good one.
Yeah.